Good morning, class. Welcome to our first class. And today, what I want to do is provide the framework for how we will learn the semester. What are we learning? How are we learning? Why are we learning? All right, so this is a class of ideas. So it's really important for you to pay attention and understand how these ideas connect with each other. If I'm not being clear, ask me a question. In fact, make it a habit to ask as many questions as possible, because that way you will learn more, learning will be more fun for you, and learning will be much more clear to you, okay? So let's get in the habit of asking questions. So wherever I am confusing, wherever I'm speaking too fast, wherever you don't understand, interrupt me, okay? Let's get in the habit. All right, so I first want to talk about Immanuel Kant. We will be discussing him a lot this semester because he is the greatest philosopher in Western history. And he taught us how the world works. And this is what he told us. He told us that we can never know the objective reality. There is an objective reality, what he calls the noumena. Okay? Or the things in themselves. That is not knowable to us. That is a world we can never access. Why? Because we perceive the world through our senses. Our senses, our perception, warps the world and changes it into a structure that we can process, called the phenomena. Which are the things that appear to us. Okay, so the example is time and space. Time and space do not exist outside of us. Time and space do not exist in reality. But for us to understand reality, we need to add in time and space. Okay, that's the example. All right? So, how the world works is we perceive the world, we perceive the noumena, and turn it into the phenomena for us to process. In other words, and this is really important, reality is what we imagine it to be. There is no objective reality. Reality is what we imagine it to be. Life is a constant process, a constant act of imagination. All right? That's Immanuel Kant. That's the first idea I want you to understand. So what I want to do in this class this semester is train you or teach you or inspire you to augment your imagination so that you see the world much more clearly. This class is not about what to think, it's about how to think. All right. All right, so let me explain the structure of the course. So there's past, there's present, and there's future. We'll be looking at all three this semester, the past, the present, and the future. We will be analyzing all three in order to construct a more objective reality for ourselves. We will not succeed, we will fail. But the process of trying will train our minds to think much more critically about the world. So, let me explain how. In the present, we have geopolitics. We'll be studying geopolitics. For example, why is there war in Ukraine? Why is there war in the Middle East? what will happen. We'll be studying geopolitics. And we'll try to understand why this is happening. We'll try to formulate an analytical model of geopolitics. Okay, an analytical model. We will then use this analytical model to make predictions about the future. Why do we do this? Because these predictions will tell us if our analytical model is correct or not. Okay, does that make sense? It's no different from artificial intelligence. How do you know if your artificial intelligence, the model is correct or not? Well, you test it against reality. Okay? There's no difference between that artificial intelligence system and what we're trying to do here. And why are we doing this? Because if we're able to have an analytical model that makes correct predictions, then we can take all this and go back and analyze the past to reveal the secret history of the world. That is a project we are undertaking this semester to discover for ourselves the secret history of humanity. Because you may not know this, but all the history that you learn in school, all that history that you think you know, it is false. Okay? The history that you know, the history that you believe, it is a system implanted into your brains by powerful people. Okay? So the real question that we're looking at this semester is really, how does power work? Because if we can figure this out, then you will achieve liberation. You will achieve freedom. You understand how you're being manipulated by others, and therefore you'll be free. You'll be empowered to live the way you want to live, to see the world that is true to you. So let me give you 3 concrete examples of how power works. Okay, the first example is money. Let us do a thought experiment. I'm a bank, okay? I decide I want to open a bank. And now you're allowed to put money in the bank, okay? So all of you get together and you put $5 million in the bank. Not $5 million. Now, why do you put $5 million into my bank? Because I promise you 1% interest, right? 1% interest. That's a really good deal. But now, because I owe you some money, right? I owe you 1% interest. I now need to go make money for myself. So I have a friend who's building a restaurant, and he says, I need $5 million to build a restaurant. And after a year, I will pay back 10% interest. Okay? 10% interest. And so I make a 9% profit, and I can use that to pay my employees, to pay myself a salary, to build a new building, okay? So now I want you to think about this. I'm the bank, I got $5 million in deposit money, then I gave out a $5 million loan. Today, how much money is in the bank? Countless. How much money now do I have? I got $5 million from you guys, then I gave it out to someone else, right? So how much money is in the bank right now? Zero is zero, right? It should be zero. Logically, the answer is zero. In fact, zero is the answer that you are taught in economics. It's what you are taught, yeah?
Zero is not the answer that we're taught in economics.
Okay.
You cannot loan all the money that you have. Like, for example, if they will have a limit like 25%, I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe 10%, so you can only loan like 4 million pounds.
Okay, really good point, okay, yes. Okay, so that's really good. So in economics, you learn about the idea of the fractional reserve system. Okay, what's fractional reserve? As you say, you must leave behind a certain amount of money. It could be 7%, it could be 10%, it depends on the country, okay? Let's say 10%. So theoretically, I can actually lend out $5 million. I can only lend out $4.5 million. Okay? You're right, okay? That's law as well. Okay? Okay, let's say I lend out $4.5 million, okay? Now how much money do I have in the bank? Yeah, $500,000, right? Okay, so again, this is what you're taught in economics. This is what makes logical sense, right? The correct answer, what actually happens in real life, is you now have $9.5 million. Okay, that is the correct answer. This makes no sense, right? But it happens in reality. And how do we know? Because over the past 20 years, Chinese banks, like the Bank of China, the Bank of Industry and Commerce, the Agricultural Bank of China, if you Google these banks, what you will see is, these past 20 years, these banks have become the largest in the world. How did that happen? Was it because Chinese people got rich and put all the money in the bank? No, that's not what happened. What happened, guys?
Supported by the country, the government.
Okay, what happened was these banks start to lend money out to corporations, to government, to people, to build skyscrapers, to build roads. In other words, the banks started to create money out of nothing in order to finance China's infrastructure projects. And that's what banks are allowed to do. They're allowed to print money, create money out of nothing. Okay, does that make sense? Now the question then is, wait a minute here. That's kind of absurd. How this system come into being? How is it created? Okay, well actually, there's a very easy explanation for where we got the system from. All right, so let me explain the history and the origin of the system. So in the beginning, it was merchants who engaged in finance, because merchants needed money in order to facilitate trade. Okay? And some merchants became extremely wealthy. And when they became very wealthy, they started banks in order to support trade and other merchants. Okay, so these banks traded in gold because that was the primary source and supply of money back then. Okay, so what happened is you would come and you would put your money, your gold, in the bank for safekeeping. And the bank would give you a contract, right? A contract is just saying, thank you for giving me your gold. I promise to give back your gold at any time that you want it. And this is what we call a receipt, right? And this would allow for better and easier trade. Because now I can take this contract and I can go to England, okay? Maybe I'm based in Italy. But now I can go to England and say, listen, I need to buy cotton or bananas from you. And the person is like, well, what are you gonna give me? I'm gonna give you gold, right? So I take the receipt and I give it to you, right? And why do we do this? Because it's a lot easier than giving gold to other people. And so this system would facilitate trade throughout the world. Does it make sense? Now, I'm the bank. I have all this gold. And I want to make money with it. So I want to give it to other people. So other merchants would come to me and say, listen, I need gold. Can you lend me out gold? Right? But I say to him, yeah, but if I give you out the gold, you have a security issue. It's inconvenient for you. So why don't I give you a receipt, a contract instead? Does that make sense? Because all I need is a contract, all I need is a receipt in order to go and do trade elsewhere. Right? So by doing this, what I've done is I've doubled the gold in my bank, right? I've created money out of nothing. So the gold is still 5 million. That hasn't changed, but the receipt is now 5 million plus 5 million. So theoretically, I now have 10 million in the bank. All right? So that's how money and finance works. Now, there's a problem with this system. What's the problem with this system? What do you mean?
Why would the other people take the receipt as gold, as they're saying now?
Okay, that's a good question, okay? Why is it that people believe in me? Okay? The answer is very simple. The answer is because throughout most of human history, people didn't need money. If you were just a normal person, what were you doing? Were you in a village growing crops? If you wanted to like get new stuff, what would you do? You would trade with someone else, right? Maybe you have a gold that I want. Well, then I would trade you a cow for it. So we didn't actually need money. So throughout most of human history, no one had any need for money. It was only in certain circumstances that you would want money. So for example, marriage, right? Okay? So throughout most of human history, money represented debt that could be unpaid. Debt that could never be repaid. So for example, a very common thing is, maybe you and I fight, and I kill you. Well, in theory, your family should now come and kill me. But obviously that would create a lot of problems, right? So the way to settle the dispute is, I would give your family money. Because money was symbolically meant to say, I'm sorry, I killed you. This is a debt that can never be repaid. Okay? That's what money was used for in most circumstances throughout human history. There was no actually real use for money. It was symbolic. But with the rise of trade and with merchants, they needed money in order to facilitate the trade. But these merchants all knew each other, so they trusted each other anyway. So money was a mechanism for them to trade easier, okay? Does that make sense? All right? Okay, so let's go back to the question. This system looks great. I can print money out of nothing, but there's a problem with this system. What is the problem? There's a problem here.
Like you can forge the receipts and, the money fakes.
Okay, that's actually a great question, okay? So, yeah, is it possible to forge the contract? Okay? So, that's a really good point. The problem is, so the answer is that they all knew each other anyway. Okay, because it's a very small circle. Again, we have not reached the modern period where it's a lot of people using money. If that's the case, then forgery becomes a problem. We'll discuss this in future classes, okay? Counterfeiting. But at this point in history, forgery is actually not a big issue. There's actually a bigger issue. And it's a huge issue. What's the issue? I have $5 million of gold, right? There's about $10 million of gold out there in receipts. What's the problem with that? The problem is that if everyone wants to go at the same time, I go bankrupt, right? Because I lose my reputation. The contract says that at any time you want the gold, I must give it to you. But if I have if there's $100 million in gold contracts, but I only have $10 million in gold, only if 15 million wants the gold back, then I'm screwed. This is what we call a bank run. Okay, a bank run. And this is a huge problem for merchants. Okay? There's also another problem with the system, and the problem is this. Who do I usually lend my money to? Do you guys know? If I'm a bank, if I'm a merchant, who do I usually lend my money to? Okay, guys, today we lend the money to entrepreneurs. But back then, there really weren't entrepreneurs. There were kings and noble people. And what did they do all the time? Why did they need money? To fight wars, okay? That's why there's a demand for gold. Because if I'm a king, I need to fight a war, usually against my brother or someone else to control this territory, right? Now, the problem with this is I could get killed, in which case, oops. But also, what's much more common is the king would be like, screw you, bank, I don't need to pay you back. Okay? So there's actually a lot of risks with this system. So over time, develop a system to mitigate or reduce this risk. Okay? What would they do? What they would do is they would create cartels. Cartels are just partnerships. So maybe this bank works with another bank, throughout Europe. And the way they establish these cartels is usually through intermarriage, right? They would marry each other, they would combine together. And that way, let's say 15 million of receipts wants back the gold, but there's only 10 million. Well, guess what? You just go to another bank. Okay? And let's just say a king decides, I'm not going to pay you back, bank. Well, your bank works with other banks to establish a new enemy to kill the king to get the money back. Do you understand? And this system is what we call today central banking.